Your full names, please.
My name is Vitumelo Josephine Mangena.
Your last name is?
Mangena.
Mangena. In which language do you want to testify?
In English.
In English? Very well. You have an option to take the conventional oath or an affirmation.
I'll take the conventional oath, Justice.
Ms. Mangena, do you swear that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth, nothing but the truth? And if so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Counsel.
Thank you. Ms. Mangena, thank you for being here today. Can you tell us what who is Resiba Rahab Mangena?
Raisiba was my mom.
In front of you there is a photograph, and it's numbered ELAH 30. Is this a photograph of your mum?
Yes, it is.
When was it taken?
It was taken in between 2012 and 2013.
Between 2012 and 2013. Where was it taken?
At the Union Buildings in Pretoria.
And who took this photograph?
I'm not sure who she was with.
Can you tell us when your mum passed away?
On the 6th of June, 2016.
Was your mother at Life Esidimeni, Randfontein?
Yes, she was.
When was she admitted?
May 2015.
And what was your mother's condition?
She had vascular dementia.
Can you tell us what that meant?
So the doctor said basically she had a series of mild strokes which had affected her vascular system. So the vascular system is what your brain uses to communicate with the rest of your body. It sends signals. Your body communicates with your brain through the vascular system. So it had damaged her vascular system, so her brain and her body were starting to lose certain parts of communication. So they said she'd lose her memory or her ability to speak, her ability to walk, and it would deteriorate. But if she's on the right medication, it would take a longer period for it to deteriorate.
Was your mother on medication?
Yes, she was.
What medication was she on?
She was on hypertensive medication for her high blood pressure and antipsychotics for the dementia.
Antipsychotics and antihypertensives. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us when your mother was admitted to Life Esidimeni? Did you say May 2015?
Yes.
And how long was she there?
For a year.
And how was she while she was at Life Esidimeni? Did you visit her?
Yes, we would visit as much as we could at first because I was staying with my sister in Cosmo City. So we would try go every weekend, but it got too expensive. So we started going every second weekend to go visit her. And at first, when she first moved there, her condition did drop a bit. But the doctors and the social worker, they explained that because of the new environment and because of her condition, she struggles to get used to a new environment. But as she got used to it, her condition started to improve. They would say that, during the week she'd talk about us, she'd remember us. She was mobile. So the only things that have to do was like feed and bath her. But with the other stuff, she was still able to do herself.
Were they providing her medication at Life Esidimeni?
Yes, they were. They were providing her medication, they were providing food, they were providing clothing as well. Because when she first moved there, we asked if we had to bring anything, because at the previous place she was at, we had to provide the clothing and everything else. So when we first arrived there with a bag full of clothing, they told us that they don't need it as they provide clothing and food and everything else.
And just tell us a bit more about your mother's condition at Life Esidimeni when you visited her.
She was very stable. She was comfortable around the nurses. You know, she had developed a relationship with them and she was very comfortable around them. And her condition, you could say, it was very stable. It was very stable and she wasn't deteriorating, and we were very happy with how she was. Whenever we went, she was clean, well taken care of. If anything happened, they'd always inform us, because I think there was a time when she got an ear infection. And
When she got what?
an ear infection.
An ear infection,
Yes.
thank you.
And the doctors from Life called us immediately. They informed us that they were going to take her to Joburg Jain. They told us when they were going to take her, which doctor is going to see her, when she would be back, what procedures they would do, what meds they were going to put her on. We were always constantly informed. And she was always well taken care of. Whenever we went, they were always satisfied with the service that she was getting, even the treatment that we would get. They were always understanding of how traumatic it was for us, especially because my mom had just been recently diagnosed, because she only got diagnosed end of 2014, December 2014. So it was something that we were still getting used to. So they were very understanding of that, and you know, the social workers would always call and check up on us to make sure of how we were coping, you know. So they understood that it was something that was very, extremely traumatic for us, and that we were supporting not just her, but us as well.
At which facility was your mother?
Life Esidimeni in Randfontein.
The Randfontein one.
Yes.
Okay.
And how many siblings do you have?
There's 4 of us. I've got 2 brothers and then my sister and myself.
And did you all visit
Yes,
your mother?
yes, we did. We'd all visit and we'd alternate. So the weekend that my sister and I went, and then someone would go the next weekend, just to make sure that every weekend she'd have a visitor. Or if we couldn't go, our aunts would go. So we tried to make sure that every single weekend she'd have someone just to go and see her and check up on her.
Were you informed that she would be moved from Life Esidimeni?
At one of the meetings that the family committee and Section 27 had held, my sister went there, and the nurses we were informed of the move, but we were told that they were still in court trying to fight the entire process. So the first weekend of May 2016, my sister and I went to go visit her, and when we were there, the nurses said that they think that the move is going to happen, but my mom was not going to be moved because she was considered a critical patient.
Mm-hmm.
So all the critical patients would remain at Life Esidimeni, and then they would move all the other patients first to NGOs. So we were told that right now at that point in time, she was not being considered for a move.
And then this was when you were at Life Esidimeni, you were
Yes.
informed of this. And then did you go back again to visit her?
My sister went back the next weekend because there was another family committee meeting to discuss the entire move. After the meeting, she asked if she could go see my mother. When she got there, the security called the ward, and the ward told the security that they must tell my sister that she's already been moved.
Yet your mother's already been moved.
Yes, that she was not there anymore. So we saw her the Saturday, and
Did they tell you
moved her.
where she had been moved to?
They said that the transport that had gone to either Takalani or Pretoria. There was an NGO in Pretoria. So, but they said chances are that they had taken her to the Takalani one, and we must try contact Takalani and find out if she's there. But they said that the social workers from Takalani were supposed to have contacted us already. So but we hadn't received any communication. So the first that we heard of her being moved was when my sister went to go visit her, and she was told that she's not there anymore.
So there was nobody from the department who contacted
No,
you
we had
before the
received-
move. Did anybody contact you after she had been moved to Takalani?
They called us, but after we had already been to visit.
So tell us about that. You
So
established then that she had been moved to Takalani.
Yes. So my sister went to see her the weekend that she went to see her, and then found out that she wasn't there. And then she informed the rest of us that she had been moved. The following Saturday, my brother went to Takalani. And that's how we found her, basically.
And how, when was this?
This was the third week of May.
Third week of May 2016.
Yes, third last week of May.
And what was her condition when you visited her at Takalani?
When he first got there, he asked to see her. He gave them her name, sorry. And they looked for her. The nurses that were there went in and looked for her, and they brought him someone else. So he said, no, this is not my mother, but she had my mother's name tag on. So she's like,
But
no,
it was not your mother.
it was not her. So they told him, okay, well, they're all in the hall, so you can go through and look for her in the hall. And he says the circumstances, they were extremely devastating. The place was overcrowded. Some were sitting on the chairs, but because there wasn't enough space, some were sitting on the floor. Everyone was still in the uniform that they had been brought in from Esidimeni. When he says he couldn't even recognize my mom at first. He actually walked past, and when the second round, that's when he noticed that she was there due to the amount of weight that she had lost. And she wasn't wearing any socks, she wasn't wearing a jersey, she was sitting in a corner without a jersey, shivering. And this is like just before winter. And he asked the nurses, he told the nurses, okay, this is the person I'm looking for, but he asked, okay, how are you taking care of her if you don't know who she is? Because when my mom first got diagnosed, we're told that she has to be on the right medication. Should she not be on the right medication, her condition will deteriorate very quickly. So he asked, if you don't know who she is, how are you giving her the right medication? And her feet were swollen. She was extremely hungry. So he found her jersey. He went out to go buy her a jersey. The nurses, he had asked them what can he bring, what are we allowed to bring, why are they in these conditions? How are they some are sitting on the floor, some are sitting in chairs, not dressed when we're approaching winter. And the lady that was there told him that, well, she doesn't know anything, that she's actually had just started working there, and she was even asking him if he could help her find accommodation, because she was saying she had just moved to the area, and basically how they got people was, if you're working there previously and you had a friend, you would call them and say, here's a job. They had no training, they had no skills, they had no experience. And she was saying that she's looking for accommodation for herself and her sister, who was coming the next weekend. So that was
also to work
there
at Takalani.
at Takalani.
Tell me about Takalani. What do you know about it? Where is it located geographically?
It's located in Soweto in Deep Kloof. My knowledge of Takalani, when my sister first called me, letting me know that she had been moved to Takalani, because I was in the Val at school. I study at Northwest University in the Val. And this was during my exams, so I couldn't come home. So the best I did was I went on Google. And the first 4 pages on Google all had negative reports about Takalani. They'd been closed multiple times. They'd been stories of malnutrition, children not being fed, children, dying. The first 4 pages on Google had nothing positive. Changing of board members, changing of directors. And I panicked. I was literally so scared because if this place has such negative history, how is it now suddenly fit to take care of extra people, of an extra influx of people when they were already struggling with what they had, And if me just doing my research on Google could see that this place isn't fit enough, how had the government found this place fit enough to take care of these people?
So your first port of call was Google.
Was Google.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the real new generation, aren't you?
That was the best thing I could do because I couldn't go home because of my exams.
What did you do when you discovered these negative reviews on Google?
I called my sister, and it was just after she had gone to see her, and the first thing she said to me was, "Come home right after your exams." So I knew something was wrong.
When did you go home?
She passed away during my exams. I was on my way to write my paper when I got the call.
When you received the call? From
From
whom?
my brother.
Is your brother here today?
Yes, he's over there. So it was the morning of my economics, my major, when I received the call.
What date was that?
On the 6th of June, 2016.
How long had she been at Takalani then?
Around 3 weeks.
Was she receiving her medication while she was at Takalani?
My brother says when he got there, because of how bad the conditions were, he spent the entire day with her so that he could feed her and make sure that she was properly taken care of for the day. And around 12, the nurses came out with 3 boxes of medication, and each patient was getting a pill from each box. So basically all the patients were getting the same medication. And he says...
Do you know what medication that was?
No, we don't. And
Each pill for each patient from each box.
not for each patient, because he says it was a matter of the patients who could walk themselves to where the nurses were would get the medication. If
They also had disabled patients, you mean on wheel who couldn't move, who were mobile?
I think because of, like with my mom's condition, they'd said she'd also lose ability of her legs. So when he found her, she couldn't walk. So patients like that who weren't mobile, who weren't able to talk, were not, if you can't speak for yourself or get yourself to that place, you would not get the medication.
What place are you talking about?
At Takalani. If you cannot get to the station where the nurses were standing.
To the station where the medicines were dispensed.
Because even with the food, he says they were all just put on one table. So the patients who could walk to the plate would have to go get a plate. So he had to go get a plate to come feed my mom.
Did he say how many people he thought were there?
Around 100. He says there were around 100.
100 patients at Takalani, is that right?
And that was including the live patients and those patients who had been there prior.
And did he observe her sleeping quarters?
After the meds, he says they gave them the meds first at around 12, and they ate later on around 4. That's when they got food. And after that, he refused to leave without seeing where she was going to sleep. So when they moved them into the ward where they were all sleeping, there were a few beds, but those beds had pictures on top of them and these are the beds of the patients who had been there before. And you can see that these are the pictures of their loved ones. And around the ward, there were benches going around the entire ward. So the patients from Esidimeni would sleep on the benches. So they would all just sit upright on the benches, and those who couldn't find space on the bench would sleep on the floor.
Were there mattresses on the floor?
No. And those who were there prior would then go to their beds. But because he refused to leave, they took my mom to a bed, but he could see that it was not her bed because it had the other patients' pictures on the wall.
Where was that patient?
He doesn't know.
Were there blankets?
No. So you would sit on the chair and sleep how you were dressed. Or you didn't make it to the bench in time, then you would sleep on the floor with what you were dressed in. The only people that had blankets were the patients that had beds.
And were there bathroom facilities?
He didn't see the bathroom facilities. But you could tell that she hadn't bathed in a while.
How could you tell?
From the smell and from the clothing. The clothing looked very dirty, and it was the same outfit that she had been moved in. And even when my sister went there the next day to ask if, are we allowed to bring clothing, are we allowed to bring food, what are the visiting hours, how often are we allowed to visit, the nurse said she doesn't know anything because she had just started working there. So she doesn't know how everything works.
From the photograph in Ella 30, your mother looks like somebody who took pride in her appearance.
Very much. She loved dressing up. She took care of herself very well. Always made sure that she presented herself properly. She really did.
Can you tell us who called you to inform you that your mother had passed away?
We were called by a lady called, Mahwadi Christina from Takalani. She's the head nurse from Takalani. And they called my brother. She said that she had tried to contact my sister, but they had entered her information incorrectly on the system. So that's why they couldn't get a hold of her. So they called my brother. And they say that she had passed away the night before. They told us that she had passed away the night before. And she passed away at Jabulani Hospital. We were not told that she had been moved to a hospital. And the reason they said for not calling us, because she passed away, they said around 9 o'clock on the 5th.
On the
5th of June, 2016.
Not 6th?
No. Oh, she passed away on the 6th, sorry, they let us know on the 7th.
Yes.
So they said that the reason why they couldn't call us on the 6th was because the head nurse who had admitted her wasn't there. She had already knocked off at 6, so they can't make any calls for any patients that she admitted. So they had to wait until the next day when she came back in before they could call family members. That was the reason we were told. Why we were only told the next day.
And what happened? How did your mother die?
On the B16, because when we got there, the B16 had been filled out, her death certificate had been fetched. We didn't even go to the hospital. We went to Takalani to meet with the manager of Takalani. And when we got there, he said that we'd have to wait for Ms. Christina because
What was the name of the manager of Takalani?
Michael.
Michael.
And he said that we'd have to wait for the manager for the head nurse, Christina. And we were there for most of the day, and they kept saying they can't.
What was the date? What was the date on which you were there?
The 7th.
The 7th.
Yes. So we were there for most of the day, and they said they can't reach her. She's at the police station. She's at Deep Cliff Police Station. And then we
So,
went to...
sorry, you had travelled back.
We had gone...
That was the day you were writing an exam?
Yes, so I had to go back home. I didn't go write my paper. I had to go back home.
Okay. So you were there at Takalani on the 7th?
On the 7th, it was my sister, my brother, and my dad. Because when I got there, they'd already left. So they got to Soweto around 12 o'clock, and they waited, and they said this lady was at the Deep Cliff Police Station. They went to the police station. When they got there, they called her, and she said she's already left. She's back at Takalani. They went back to Takalani, and she wasn't there. She only got there around 4. And then at 4, she took them to, when she finally got there, she took them to the funeral parlor. She had already been moved from the hospital to a funeral parlor.
Without your consent, the consent of the
Yes.
family?
Yes.
Which
Even
funeral
with the
parlor?
form Fusana funeral parlor in Deep Kloof. Even with the B16 forms, they already filled out for us by this lady, the death certificate.
What are B16 forms?
B16 forms are the forms indicating place of death, cause of death. Yes.
And what was written as a cause of death?
The cause of death was cardiac arrest and epileptic fits, but my mom has never been epileptic. She's never had epilepsy. And when I went for my interviews with the ombudsman, he says that someone who does not understand vascular dementia would take a mild stroke, which they get when they're not on proper medication, as an epileptic fit. So it's a sign of not being on proper medication, and that's why they thought that she had been having epileptic fits throughout the week, when it was actually her having mild strokes as a sign of not being on the right medication, and her condition therefore deteriorating.
Did you spoke about the funeral parlor?
When they got to the funeral parlor, they were told to wait again, because they said they had to prepare the body before they could allow them to see it. So that was another hour wait, and then they were finally allowed to see and identify her.
Who paid for the costs of the undertaker and the funeral service?
We did.
You did. And what was the cost?
I'm not sure of the exact amount, but we paid all of the funeral expenses. So we were finally allowed to go. They were finally allowed to go in and identify her, and that's when the funeral proceedings started.
Who identified her?
My brother, my sister, and my father. They went in to go identify her, because we wanted to make sure that it was her. Because when they first went to go there to visit, they couldn't identify her. You know, how were we to be sure that it was her who had passed away? So after that, they went back to Takalani, and Christina lady pulled out my mother's file so that she could give us her ID documents and the death certificate.
Just to clarify, you say that your mother was taken to which hospital?
They say Jabulani Hospital. We've never been to the hospital. We've never received a call from the hospital. So
there was no one with your mother at the hospital from the family?
No, we weren't informed when she was moved to the hospital, and when we were already informed of her passing, they said they had already moved her to a funeral parlor. So we've never been to the hospital. We don't know which. We just know that she was at Jabulani Hospital. That's the name we were given. So we've never been to the hospital. We've never met any nurse from the hospital. So from Takalani, we were taken directly to the funeral parlor.
And you say you are one of 4 siblings. Mm-hmm. And what has the impact of this been on you and your family?
It's been very hard, because for us, she was our mother. You know, we've all grown up having normal, loving mother who was there at school award night, who was there to make a school lunch in the morning, who took me to my first day at varsity, who was with me on my first day going to varsity, who helped me move, helped me pack, you know. We all had, she was our mother. So at a point where we were just starting to accept that she was not the woman that we know, that we're used to, we lost her. And at a point where we were just starting to accept her loss, we then found out of the way in which she died. Because for us, we just thought it was the cardiac arrest that we had been told of. So February this year, at the Ombudsman's press release, finding out that our mother had been starved and dehydrated to death.
How did you find that out?
At the press release, at the Ombudsman's press release, beginning February this year, 2017. So having to find that out was very hard.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. When your brother visited your mother at Takalani, he could barely recognize her, you said. Did you, as a family, consider taking her out?
We did. We asked if we could remove her. At first, the reason why we even considered putting her into the public system was when we first started noticing that she was getting sick. We noticed she was very paranoid. She would hallucinate. So when we first noticed that, and we took her to Vista in Centurion, it's a depression clinic. So we just thought she'd have to go through psychology, get vitamin B12, and she'd be back home. And when the doctor told us, the psychiatrist called us in for a family meeting and explained to us that after all the tests that she's run, she can conclude that my mom has vascular dementia. And with that, she explained that she would have to be in the public system because they give the best long-term mental health care. So she advised us that we take her, we move her from Vista, and we admit her into the public system because they give the best long-term mental health care, and they would take better care of her than being at a private hospital, because at private clinics, they only deal with your depression and your anxiety. They don't deal with such cases. They don't have the resources and the skills to deal with such cases. So that's when we took her to Charlotte Matleka here, and from there she was moved to Tara, and from Tara she was moved to Life Esidimeni. And we were told that we would never be able to take care of her on our own. All the social workers at each institution, at Vista, at Charlotte, at Tara, all told us that we would not be able to take care of her because someone with vascular dementia needs to be taking the correct medication at all times. And when her condition changes, so does her medication. So we would not be able to identify when she would need a change of medication. So we would, and she also said that it would also be emotionally draining to have her in the house. So they all did not recommend us taking care of her because they said we're all too young and we would not mentally be able to cope with having her in the house emotionally as well. So that is why we went into this thinking this was the best. This was the best option we had, because at all the different institutions we took her to, they said, this is the best. This is the best kind of care for this condition. And we were told we still have a long time with her, So even hearing that, even though she's not in our lives anymore, you continue to make plans with her. with her in mind. I mean, we'd go visit and we'd talk about my graduation, and she's gonna be there, and So it was very hard, and it's been very hard because this was someone we still thought we'd have in our lives for a long time to come. So just as we were starting to deal with the fact that she's not the mother we used to, we lost her. And we lost her with thinking that this was the best place she could be, and we still have time. So it's been very hard to accept, and it's been very hard to move on. It's taken a physical toll on all of us, an emotional toll on all of us.
And how's your father coping?
Not too well as well. He's actually in Limpopo now, but he also recently almost had a stroke. So I also almost had a stroke, and I'm on muscle relaxants as well. So it's taken a very physical and emotional toll on all of us.
How old are you?
I'm 24.
You say it's had a physical toll on you. You've seen a doctor.
Soon after the funeral, I think we buried her on a Friday. On a Tuesday night, I couldn't sleep. I had these sharp pains running up and down my entire left side, and I couldn't sleep. And in the morning, I went to the doctor, and he said I was having a panic attack so extreme that I almost had a stroke, hence the sharp pains. And they had to run tests to check that it hadn't affected my heart and anything else, and that's why they put me on the muscle relaxants and on the sleeping tablets as well. I haven't been able to sleep because when we went to go view her body, because of the strokes that she had, her face had collapsed on the one side. So I wasn't aware of this. So when we went to go view her body, when I saw it, I literally ran out. Because it is that bad. She had lost so much weight, and the collapse of her face, it looked that scary that I literally ran out. So I've been having, nightmares, and ever since then.
And your siblings?
The same. They've all, after the funeral, they all had to go to doctors. We're all on different kinds of medication.
All of your siblings?
All of us. My brother was also put on the same medication as ours, and my sister, they said that the stress, because they say her stress area is her shoulders, was so much that it was starting to bend her spine. So she's on medication, and she has to be on physio. So it's been very hard on us. It's been extremely hard on us, and we came into this entire process thinking we would gain healing, thinking we would get answers that would make us understand and would make things clearer for us, and we haven't.
But you know now, from the Ombudsman reports that you referred to, that Takalani was not licensed when your mother was there. That there had been no preparations in the proper selection of patients which were to be placed at Takalani. The report tells us that there were no proper medical records that would facilitate prescription and medication of patients. And we know from the report that Takalani was hopelessly overcrowded. And that in fact it was a death trap.
In terms of the files, when we went there, when my siblings went there after her passing, Christina, when she gave them the death certificates, she had my mother's file. And it was her file from Charlotte, from when she first got admitted.
From Charlotte Matlaki Hospital,
yes,
right?
Because the file travels with the patient as they move. And the file even had her picture on it. So they had her entire medical records from the beginning.
That included the live Esidimeni ones?
Yes.
Yes.
So in terms of her medical records, they had everything. Because even in terms of contacts, they said that's how they found us, because our contacts were on her file.
So you're really saying, had they been trained and had they been diligent, they had the means to know on what medication your mother was on.
They had the means to know what she had, what medication she was on. And if they were properly trained, then they would have noticed what the different changes meant for her condition. And it could have been prevented if it was someone who had the relevant background.
The state tells us that they concede, they agree that their wrongful and unlawful and negligent conduct costs the death of your mother. What does that do for you? Does it help anyway?
It doesn't. Because it does. I say it doesn't help because they agree, but the way in which they've treated the families afterwards, it's almost as if they've agreed to save face, but they still don't realize or haven't fathomed the amount of damage and hurt that they've caused. Because we went to a prayer session in December last year, held by the Premier.
Where was that?
At a church here in town, in Joburg. And one of the ministers, who was the MC, said, "We are here today because you chose to throw your people away. Had you not thrown your people away..."
Who is you?
He's referring to the families. "Had you not thrown your people away, then the government wouldn't have had to take care of them and they wouldn't have died." So it's almost as if they have this perception that because these people were mentally ill, they didn't have families who cared for them. We cared for these people. These are our people. We cared for them. We did as much as we could. We went over and beyond in terms of going to visit, in terms of anything that they wanted. At Tara, when she was at Tara, they'd always call if they were short of anything. And we would go buy and bring. Whatever they needed, we would provide. Whatever they were short of, we would help. So for them, it's almost as if because they were in these institutions, their families didn't care about them, so why should we? Why are they making a big deal of these deaths because they had thrown their people away?
Do you remember the name of the minister you're talking about?
I don't remember the name, but he was the MC of the event.
Was it a male that
Yes.
was MC?
And they had another healing session as well this year in Pretoria. And the MC again
Was it
said,
the same MC?
No, it was a different one. And she said, people die all the time, so why are you crying? We understand that people die all the time. Our problem is the manner in which they died in. These people were sent to their deaths. And they died in the most painful way possible. They were tortured to a point of death.
At the prayer meetings, did anybody from the state tell you why they sent your families to a place like Takalani, which on all accounts, if you look at the Ombudsman report, Takalani is amongst the 5 worst places that you could have been sent to. In other words, death was almost assured at Takalani.
It was inevitable.
Yeah. Did any one of these officials at these prayer sessions tell you why they made this decision to move your family members in this way?
We've never been told, Justice, we've never been told why this decision was made. We've never been told why those people were kept there for so long, even when people first started dying. No changes were being made. We've never had any explanations, and that's what I'm saying. For me personally, I came into this entire process hoping to get answers, thinking we would get answers, so that we can start to heal, so that we can start to comprehend all that happened. And we haven't. Because following the arbitration, everyone who's been called in, who's supposed to have some sort of answer, don't want to take responsibility. And it's all, I don't know, I don't know. Nobody wants to be held liable for the damage which they caused.
Who do you think is responsible?
I think there were quite a few people who were responsible. And I think everyone now is using Qedani as a scapegoat because she's not here to answer for herself.
Qedani Mahlangu is the MEC
Of health, yes.
of health.
Was
the MEC of health, okay.
And I think they're all using...
Remember, many other people are going to read this record.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So they should be able to identify who we're talking about. Okay.
And they're all using her as a scapegoat because she's not here to answer for herself, but she's not the only one at fault. Yes, she might have called this entire thing into action, but as a person, you have a moral obligation to say no. As a manager at the NGO, as the nurses at an NGO, when you go a day without having fed these patients, when you are dressed in your warm clothes and these patients are there without clothes, aren't getting food, aren't getting the right medication, you have the moral obligation to call these people out. You can't just sit back and watch and then say, well, I was told to do so. A gun wasn't held to your head. You, at a certain point, could have said, but this is wrong, let's change it. But this is wrong, let's get help. When families came in to visit, you could have said, we're not coping. Bring this, help us with this.
There was more than a moral obligation, certainly on the government.
Because they've taken oaths.
And because we have a constitution. We have gone through, you talk about our people as your families, your people, but they are all of our people. And they are specifically in the care of the government. And the government has constitutional obligations with regard to not just how they govern, but how they treat people of this country, our people.
Yeah, and they've let them down and they continue to let us down in the manner in which they treat us as families, because there's still a complete disregard for the families.
You mean
And
even now?
yes, even attending any government-related event, I dread going to any government-related event, because there's bound to be one person who's going to throw an insult, who's going to make it seem as though we didn't care, or, you know, why is it such a big thing? Why are you crying? You know, and even when we're there, the events are very condescending. They're very condescending in the terms that it's all very, you know, oh, we made a mistake, let's hold hands, kumbaya, you know, and I say it's almost as if we are the stars of the show, because you get to an event and they sell you this whole forgive.
What event would that be?
The healing sessions that they've been having.
Who typically would preside at the healing sessions?
They usually have different MCs at each event.
And which state officials would come out to the events?
They come, different officials that come, different state officials that come at each event. The one person who has been to all of them, who has been consistent, is David Makura. He's been
the
Premier.
the Premier of Gauteng.
Mm-hmm.
He's been consistent, but at each event there's always a different state official. And there's always this part where they say, okay, well, this person wasn't here the last time. Come tell them why you're crying. You know, like the families have to come and now justify.
Mm.
And hence I say we're the stars of the show, because it's like we're the acts, and we must now come and parade our pain. And even after that, they still don't get it.
Yeah, I do get the point, and I do get your concern and your that pain. It must be said, though, isn't it, so that the response of government here is different from many other instances where death had ensued as a result of the conduct of the state, isn't it?
That I definitely agree to. It has been, in
It
terms
has
of
been
that they've taken full responsibility.
Yes.
It has been.
Yeah, sure.
But
and we must give them that credit, because think about similar proceedings, but in relation to Marikana, you remember?
mm-hmm.
You remember the state officials were on their hind legs and fighting back, that they had done nothing wrong, you remember?
I do justice.
And here we have a situation where, in all fairness, to the Premier and the National Minister, they've come out to say their officials, public servants, were wrong, and express preparedness to find redress for the families. So there is a difference in positioning, isn't it?
There is justice. I think for us, it's just there needs to be a sincerity with all of that.
Mm.
There needs to be a level of sympathy. There's no point in me saying, I'm sorry I've wronged you, but coming back again and sort of mocking you for your pain.
Shall I tell you a little light story?
Yes, Justice.
You're young enough for me to tell you a bedtime story. When I was young, and you might find it in a little book I've written doing the rounds here, there was a bully in my neighborhood, and he would beat you up, and then he finds reason to say sorry. Then he says to me, I'm sorry, and I'm still crying. He says, I'm sorry. And I go, he says, hey, I said I'm sorry. Which, and if I persist, he says, no, I'm going to beat you up again. You must accept my apology. Okay, so you find regular township bullies who want to beat you up, compel you to accept even their apology. You see what I mean? And I hope we're not there. you know, where we are compelled to. I said, I'm sorry, did you hear me? So, you are right, apologies ought to be compassionate, ought to be honest, ought to be caring. And you can't browbeat people into submission to accept your apology. You must hope that they might, at best. So you've got a point here. And the other side of the scale, of course, we have a contrite state here. We have a state that is remorseful, that acknowledges the wrong. And it's a little step better than the past.
It is.
If you're young enough, I can tell you about Sharpeville. People were shot, they died, they lay there. Nobody has said sorry up to now. So we are in a little different zone now. And I hope it will add a little bit to the healing. You know, I'm inviting you to respond if you feel like, but it was a little bedtime story I told you. Okay.
It is. I definitely feel that there has been an effort that has been made. I definitely can't deny that, and we do appreciate those efforts. But as I was saying, it needs to come with a level of honesty, as you said. You know, don't do it just for the sake of it has to be done, but do it because you genuinely want to do it. You genuinely want to do right and make right.
Ms. Manyena, sorry, Justice.
Oh, please go ahead.
Is an apology sufficient? I understand what Justice Masaneke has been putting to you, and this is a different process to past painful experiences in this country before 94 and after. I would like to know whether you believe that an apology is sufficient, even if it's sincere. What would you want? Other than that, what would you want to hear or see from our government democratically elected, other than apology?
An apology on its own would not be enough. Because as we're saying, it's not good enough to just say sorry and then come bully me again later on. You know, there needs to be certain steps, and I can again give them credit for that, with making sure that those patients who were still in those remaining NGOs have been moved. But as well now to not just apologize to the families, as I've said, but make right with all the pain and trauma that they've now had to endure because of this. So a sincere apology is necessary, yes. A sincere apology from the relevant people. But as well, you need to make right by the families for all the hurt and trauma that they've had to endure, the physical and emotional and mental pain that they've had to endure because of this entire process.
Including, no doubt, compensation. It's an acknowledgement that wrong has been committed, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes, there are softer emotional issues. I call them softer and wrong. There are other issues, but there's also place for money as a compensation, as acknowledgement that wrong has occurred, isn't it?
It is necessary, and I think that's one of my biggest fears is I hope, but because of past interactions, I'm scared they might let us down again. As I'm saying with the past,
Who are they?
the government, as with the past healing sessions that we've been to, where we came in as families with the hope that things would be different, we'd get treated differently, and we're let down. So I hope that this process will be different from the previous treatment that we've received as families. And because this is basically the final process, and as families, we'll never get another opportunity to be done right by. So I hope that they take this with the seriousness that it carries, and it will follow through.
Well, of course, you should also hope that the Public Service Commission, or those who are in charge of that, would want to see that the appropriate steps are taken to hold those who are responsible to account, isn't it?
Yes.
Over and above what the arbitration is doing, isn't it so?
The families want that by all means. We would like to see criminal cases being pursued. And hopefully that will further highlight the seriousness of this entire matter so that it doesn't happen again. So we don't find ourselves 10 years down the line in a similar position. So we don't find ourselves this happening again, because I think we need to get to a point where we realize that mental health, especially in the current age that I'm in, is very rife. Depression starts from now an earlier age. So we need to start taking mental health extremely seriously. And just because someone has a mental condition, it does not make them less of a human. It does not make them any less deserving of treatment or of care. So we as a people, I feel, need to get to that point where just because you have a mental health condition, it doesn't make you less human. And I hope that that's what, as a country, we can take from this, that people with mental health are people, and they're as deserving of rights as any other one of us. They're as deserving of proper health care as any other one of us. Just because they can't speak up for themselves or can't defend themselves doesn't mean they don't deserve or need it, and doesn't make them any less human.
Ms. Manyana, I know how afraid you were and scared you were of this process. You've been very brave to come and speak here on behalf of the family. Is there anything else you would like to say? You don't have to, I'm just inviting you if there is.
No, I think I've shared all that I wanted to share, and yeah, I'm glad that this process is taking place, and like I said, I hope that we will start getting taken seriously as the families who have lost their loved ones, because these weren't patients. This is not just the 7th person who passed away. These are our loved ones. This is my mother. This is someone who raised me, who's taken care of me. I haven't lost a patient. I haven't lost a number. I've lost a mother.
Thank you, Ms. Manyana. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Let's get crowds.
That are still alive, that survive this process. I've said it before in this hearing that there was a similar process in the Eastern Cape with the frail care patients going. Luckily, those people didn't die because the court stopped it. But the one theme that was also recurring is the one that you've now picked up on, about you dumping your family. That was actually the political head of the Department of Social Development actually had a press statement to that effect in the Eastern Cape, saying, you are rich people, this is not Ubuntu in our culture, we care for our frail people. How do you feel about, firstly, as a family, when something like that is said?
It's hurtful. It's hurtful because we know the lengths that we went for our mother. You know, she would go to any lengths for us. She always went out of her way to make sure that we had what we need, what we wanted. And we made sure that at a time where she needed us, we did exactly what she would have done for us. So it's angering to a certain point that someone who doesn't even know the situation or understand what we've been through as families can come and say that.
And secondly, from our perspective, could you assist us perhaps in how can we make sure that this type of political statements aren't put out there? Have you got an answer perhaps to assist us?
I don't, because it's very hard to control what someone else says. And the reason why such statements are still being said is because, like I said, these people aren't seen as people. So it's almost as if, why would a family care about a mental health patient? Obviously they're throwing them away, you know. It's about changing how, as I said, we as people see people with mental conditions. The moment that we realize that these are people just as you and I are people, then such statements will change. Because there's no way that I'm sure your family would throw you away. So why would it be any different if you have a mental health condition?
Or perhaps when we equate money instead of seeing a vulnerable person. Don't you agree?
Exactly. It's as because maybe they weren't bringing any economical value, therefore they don't have value.
And as a society, we should be caring for the vulnerable more than we have done up to now. Do you agree?
I agree with that.
Thank you, Justice Museneke.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justice. Now, I only have one question for you. Have you been called to testify at the tribunal in respect of the Ombudsman's findings of Takalani?
No, we haven't.
Not. Thank you.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Has she been called to what?
To testify at the tribunal, Justice. To provide their evidence as to what they found there.
At the tribunal? Or you mean during the investigation of the Ombud?
No. With the tribunal that's now been conducted in respect of the Ombudsman's report by Takalani.
I see.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't.
Counsel?
No questions, Justice.
No questions.
Museneke.
Counsel for the State?
Thank you, Justice. There are no questions to the witness, but through you, Justice, if we can just be allowed to make some submissions from what we have heard. Firstly, Ms. Mangena, we do regret the passing of your mother. As government, we understand fully well how hard it is for one to lose a mother and a wife. And you have made mention of the fact that there are statements made by...
Well, the submissions at this stage must be propositions to the witness, and if you stop in between so that she can respond, isn't it? We're examination stage. So the proposition you put, she might say, I agree, I don't agree. She's entitled to respond at this stage. Distinct from your submissions at the end, isn't it?
Justice, we just want to acknowledge the loss of a parent.
Yes, without inviting the witness to comment.
From the government side, indeed.
Yes.
Yes. What we want to assure the witness, other family members, and the nation is that we take this tragedy very serious, and the government is willing to take measures to ensure that there is no repeat to this situation. And with regard to the fear that you have about being let down, the government has engaged itself, committed itself to engage through this process, which we are in now, in order to assist everyone else who has been affected by the tragedy. We are sincerely sorry about the event, the loss of your mother, and will take measures to help you, your family, to deal with the situation. And thank you for making the time to give an account of your story.
Thank you. You're entitled to respond.
Well, thank you for that. We appreciate it.
The one thing I struggle with still is that parts of equitable redress that might assume the form of counseling, psychological or psychiatric intervention. What do you want to say about that? The arbitration agreement anticipates that as part of redress. Is there anything you want to say about that?
At the events, at the different healing sessions that they've had, they have had social workers from social development there. And at each event, we were told that the social workers had been given our contact details and that they're supposed to follow through. We were supposed to have already been receiving counseling, but we've never received calls from any of those social workers. In fact, the most recent session we had was with the psychiatrist that Section 27 had organized for us. But in terms of anyone from the government, we haven't received any sort of communication.
So counseling was promised, but it was not forthcoming.
Yes. Because we were told that each family had been allocated to a social worker and that the social worker was supposed to communicate with us and start sessions, but we haven't received any communication.
Should I be, in the end, ordering that counseling ought to be made mandatory? Counseling funded by the state ought to be made compulsory?
I think so. I think from hearing the different stories of what the other families have been through and from my personal experience as well, I feel that counseling is necessary because this entire situation, if I can call it that, has left us very scarred and has left us very traumatized. And counseling is needed for the families because otherwise it will just filter down and now, further stress the families.
Well, it's your final moment. Is there anything else you want to say before we relieve you from the stand?
No, there isn't.
No,
there isn't justice.
You've had your day in court, as they often say. But it was a moment also, it's a very important moment to allow you to grieve and to say it. I've often with great pride talked about some of the traditional practices around death. You know how it goes. You go to your family and they repeat to everyone who comes to mourn how it happened. and you know that healing impact. He was alive and well, doing well. He went to work. He had a pain at the side of his head, and our people would repeat it to almost everybody who comes to mourn, and the beneficial effect of it on the grieving family member is obvious, isn't it? The more you say, the more accepting, the more you look into the mirror and confront the pain. So there's a little session like that here, and thanks for coming out and sharing it with us.
Yeah, thank you. Would like to thank you as well as a family for agreeing to head this entire process, and we're very thankful that some sort of effort is being made to ensure that families get answers and get the justice they deserve. So we are very appreciative.
Okay, Muredi Amangen, Sipela Gabotse.
Ke a leboga.
Counsel.
Justice Masaneke, our second witness is ready, Mrs. Pumzile Motsekwa.
I think let's go for it. We have 30 minutes in which to lead her, and if there is, we'll adjourn at 11:30, and then we can continue after the tea break.
As your justice pleases.
Very well.
Justice Masaneke, my colleague Ms. Steyn will be leading the evidence of this witness.
Dumela mma,
Santone baba,
le kae?
sikhona njani?
Oh, yakhuluma.
Yebo ma.
Ngumtshekwa okhulumayo.
Ngane kaMthekwa.
Oh, Kane kwaMtshekwa. Which language do you want to use, ma?
IsiZulu.
isiZulu. We do have a Zulu interpreter, do we? Okay. Can we perhaps start with the interpreter this time? Would you put your full names on record after Mrs. Motsekwa? Would you put your full names on record, please?
Cela usho wonke amagama akho.
Uphumzile Miriam Mashiko ngashada kaMthekwa.
I'm Pumzile Miriam Moshekwa. I'm married to the surname of Mutekwa.
Please inform the witness that we are about to swear her in.
Kwamanje mama uzothatha isifungo. Ungakulungele. Yes, she's ready.
And she's entitled to do it conventionally and say, so help me God at the end. Or she could simply affirm that the evidence will be truthful. Which option would you prefer?
Nokuthi ungakhetha ukuthi uqinisekise ubufakazi bakho noma ufunge lokho okuvamile uphakamise isandla sakho sangokudla. Ikuphi ongakhetha ukukwenza?
Phakamisa isandla sami sokudla.
She will take the conventional oath.
Okay. Would you swear that the evidence you are about to give will be the truth and nothing but the truth? And if so, please raise your right hand and say, so help me God.
Uyafunga ukuthi bonke ubufakazi ozobunika phambi kwale nkundla iqiniso, iqinisele imsulwa. Uma kunjalo cela uphakamise isandla sakho sokudla uthi inkosi ngisize.
Inkosi ngisize.
So help me God.
Counsel, Ms. Steyn.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you, Justice. And good morning, Mrs. Motsekwa.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank you very much for coming to testify at this important hearing today.
Sithanda ukubonga ukuthi uzothola ubufakazi namuhla.
Mrs. Motsekwe, you are the sister of the late Nathaniel Mashego, or affectionately known as Sally.
Ingabe udadwabo kaNathaniel noma lo owaziwa ngilika Soli, ngabe udadwabo?
Yebo. Ma.
Yes.
How do we write the last name of your brother?
Cela uspelele igama likamfowenu.
Laka Soli noma laka Nathaniel.
Nathaniel or Soli.
Justice, his surname is M-A-S-H-E-G-O.
Oh, the same. Oh, the same.
Thank you.
Mrs. Mashego, there's a photograph in front of you marked ELAH 28.
Mama kunesithombe lapha phambi kwakho njoba sisishiyo ukuthi uElla 28 uma ungaphazami.
Is that Sally?
Ingabe uSoli loyo?
Yebo uyu Soli.
Yes, it is.
When was that photograph taken?
Lesi sithombe sathathwa nini?
Sasithatha nge-2 zaka June.
It was taken on the 2nd of June.
In which year?
Ngamuphi unyaka?
2016.
2016.
And where was the photograph taken?
Lesi sithombe sathathwa kuphi?
Esidimeni.
It was taken at Life Esidimeni.
And do you remember who took the photograph?
Ingabe uyakhumbula ukuthi ubani wasithatha lesi sithombe?
Wathatha yimi because was the mukuyi birthday yakhe.
I was the one who took the picture because it was his birthday.
Thank you. Mrs. Motsekwe, can you tell us a little bit about Sally? What was he like as a person?
Ungakwazi ukusitshela okuncane nje ngoSoli, wayewumuntu onjani uSoli?
uSoli bokubhuti omkhulu kithi ekhaya, was the firstborn of my mom.
He was my big brother.
Bokuye usibheke kakhulu thina abancane.
He was the one taking care of us as kids.
Before athola this le accident yamvelela.
Before he got involved in an accident.
When did he get involved in an accident?
Wabandakanyeka nini kule ngozi?
I remember on 19, I think it was 1989.
I think it was the 19th in the year 1989.
Wahamba waye Mamelodi akasuka emsebenzini.
He was from work going to Mamelodi.
And then to the girlfriend yakhe.
He was going to visit his girlfriend.
Akafika lapho asezwa ukuthi bokune problem the hostel ne kuyimpi inkatha.
When he got there, we heard that there was a war between the Inkatha when he was going to the hostel.
And bamshaya ngembazo phezu kwenhloko.
He was hit by an axe in his head
Ahlika esitimeleni.
when he got off the train.
Was hit by what?
An axe.
An axe.
Yes.
And sahlala 2 years yonke simfuna singazi ukuthi uSoli ukuphi.
We were searching for Soli for 2 years. We didn't know where he was.
Then on 1990
On the year 1990,
samthola eKalafong Hospital.
we found him at Galafong Hospital.
So bamamenze operation from enhloko bamfaka ithambo phakathi kwenhloko bathi I don't know bathi insimbi or something phakathi kwenhloko.
He had an operation done in his head. I think it was a steel that was inserted inside his head. I'm not sure.
And Mrs. Motsekwe, did Sally stay at Life? Did Sally ever live at Life Esidimeni?
Ingabe uSoli ke waya noma wahlala eLife Esidimeni?
Ucele wahlala eKalafong wasuka wahlala eVescopis.
He stayed at Galafong and then he was taken to Vescopis
Wasuka wahlala eSidibeni.
and then he went to Life Esidimeni.
When did he go to Life Esidimeni?
Waya nini Life Esidimeni?
eSidibeni waya ngo waya ngo 2003.
He went there 2003.
And which facility was he in?
Wayehlala kweziphi ibhedlela kulezi zase-Life Esidimeni?
Is ngapha ngaseJoburg.
Somewhere around in Joburg.
Okay. Okay. Mrs. Machekwa, and Sali was in Life Esidimeni because of his head injury, is that correct?
Ingabe uSoli wahanjiswa e-Life Esidimeni ngenxa yengozi yakhe esenhloko?
Yebo.
Yes, that's true.
Did he need help bathing?
Ingabe wayedinga usizo ukuthi agezwe?
Because evescopy ama-doctor basitshela ukuthi uSoli angeke asazenzela lutho.
At Vescopy, the doctors told us that Soli couldn't do anything for himself, so he needed that help.
And he needed help eating?
Ingabe wayedinga usizo ukuthi adle?
Yes.
Yes.
And did he need help dressing?
Ingabe wayedinga usizo ukuthi agqokiswe?
Yebo.
Yes.
And did he need help going to the toilet?
Ingabe wayedinga usizo ukuthi ayiswe endlini encane?
Yebo.
Yes.
And how did he do at Life Esidimeni? What was the care like?
Waqhuba kanjani e-Life Esidimeni? Babemphethe kanjani lapho?
Esidimeni was the best isibhedlele engasibona empilweni yami engimsuse Vescopis ngimse Esidimeni because asile Esidimeni sobona uSoli besimthola a happy unclean.
Life Esidimeni was the best hospital I've ever seen in my life because whenever we went there to visit Soli, he was happy and he was always clean.
And even the my sister, as Esidimeni was uSoli baba biza a teacher. And then ebamletha nje phela athi bo teacher ngizobona my family and then asikhumbula nokuthi yithi bobani.
Ngobani ababiza uSoli teacher?
uSoli babiza ama sister lapha Esidimeni ukuthi ama teacher.
uSoli bebiza ama sisters eSidimeni othisha.
Abo teacher.
Soli
You
usually.
got interpret what I say. When I speak in isiZulu, umsebenzi wakho ukuthi angithi mami.
Kunjani?
Sure.
Soli usually referred to the nurses at Life Esidimeni as teachers. So whenever they would come to visit him, he would say to the nurses, my teachers, I'm going to see my family now. And he remembers very well.
How often did you go and visit Sali at Life Esidimeni?
Naniya kangaki ukuyovakashela uSoli e-Life Esidimeni?
Because besihlala eAtrishville, mina benginenkinga yomsebenzi. Besiya on sometimes siya enyangeni twice, and then simbona. Esinye isikhathi ngihlala maybe because babhekiwe yimi kakhulu because they don't have asina mama. And then Mama was in jail for 15 years. And then Siswam washona. Then ime wesithathu ekhaya. So bengisuka ngama-taxi ngiye eJimmiston every sometimes a month ngiye ngiyombona.
Because we went to visit Soli twice because we lived in Atteridgeville and we no longer had a mother and our father was in jail for 15 years and my sister has passed on, so I would take taxis to Jamestown and then I would connect the taxis there and go visit Soli.
Mrs. Machekwa, just to clarify, when you say you visited Soli twice, do you mean twice when he was at Life Esidimeni, twice a year, twice a month?
Mama cela usicacisele ukuthi mawuthi kabili usho kabili izombe lapha esase-Life Esidimeni noma kabili ngenyanga noma ngonyaka njalo njalo.
No, kabili enyangeni.
Twice a month.
Thank you. When did you find out that Life Esidimeni was going to close?
Wathola nini ukuthi i-Life Esidimeni izovalwa?
On April
Of which year?
2016.
How did you find out?
Wathola kanjani?
Saya sayovakashela uSoli besihamba nobaba
We went there with my father to visit Soli.
and sathola uSister Mahlangu
When we got there, we got Sister Mahlangu.
and then wasibizela ama-social worker
She called the social workers to come see us,
and then basitshela ukuthi isibhedlele siyavala.
and they told us that the hospital was going to be closed.
And did you make any requests as to where Soli should be placed or what should happen to him?
Ingabe zikhona iy'celo enazenza ukuthi uSoli ahanjiswe kwenye indawo? Ikuphi mhlawumbe enakucela ngaleso sikhathi noma nakwenza?
Saqala sakhala
We cried
because uSoli basafe ihlangothi
because his side was no longer working or functioning.
and sabacela ukuthi sicela ukuthi because sisePretoria bamise eVescopes.
We asked because we are in Pretoria that he should be located or be transferred to Vescopis.
Sorry, instead I got distracted. I missed the part on the transfer from Life Esidimeni
He hasn't.
to the new NGO.
He hasn't yet been transferred, Justice.
Oh.
Mrs.
What was the
Mashekwa,
crying about and being taken to? It was when they were informed
that's correct.
that there's a pending transfer.
That's correct,
Okay.
Justice. And can you tell us, Mrs. Mashekwa, you said that his side wasn't working. What happened to cause that?
Njoba uthi uhlangothi lwakhe lwalungasasebenzi, kwakuyini imbangela yalokho?
Sabizwa udoctor on 2015.
The doctor on the year 2015 called us
Wathi uSoli wawa ebathroom, wathelela ebathroom and then wafihla ngoti.
and he told us that Soli slipped when he was taking a bath and his side was affected because of that.
And so you said that you asked that Soli be transferred to Vescopis.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Did the department respond, or did the people at Life Esidimeni respond to that request?
Ingabe umnyango noma abantu base-Life Esidimeni baye baphendula leso sicelo senu?
Mangitshela ukuthi bazosifonela.
They said they're going to call us.
And did they ever call you?
Ingabe
No.
bake banifonela? No.
So how did you find out where Soli was?
Wathola kanjani ukuthi uSoli ukuphi?
Sabuyela futhi ngoJune
We went there in June,
and then sathola ukuthi again uSister Mahlangu
again Sister Mahlangu
waletha uSoli
uh,
in a dining room.
he took Soli to us to meet us at the dining room,
He said to get to know basinika another 3 months.
and then she told us that they've given them another 3 months.
And ngathi Sister Mahlangu ngisacindezela ukuthi uSoli ayiswe eVescopes.
And I repeated and told her again that I would like Soli to be transferred to Vescopis.
Athi kimi uSoli if uyamova uzangifonela.
And then she assured me that if Soli is going to be transferred, she is going to call me.
And did Sister Mahlangu call you when Soli was transferred?
Ingabe uSister Mahlangu wakwakushayela ucingo ngesikhathi behambisa uSoli? No.
Did anybody call you when Soli was transferred?
Ukhona yini oyakufonela? Cha.
Where was he transferred to?
Wahanjiswa kuphi?
Thina samthola ashonile.
He was dead when we finally traced him.
Mrs. Mashekwa, I know this is difficult for you, but can you tell us about the day that you found out that Soli had passed away?
Cela usitshele ngosuku lapho nathola khona ukuthi uSoli akasekho emhlabeni.
Ngise-ofisini and then ngathola i-call ephuma ekhaya. The neighbors esekhaya bathi kunabomama ababili bafike ekhaya boku uManqobe no Sophie. Then ngadrive from emsebenzini ngaye ekhaya eAtrejwen, and then ngifike ekhaya was on the 9th of September.
I was at my office when I received a call from one of my neighbors informing me that there are two ladies Mangube and Sophie, and they requesting to see us. That is when I had to drive to Attridgeville. That was on the 9th of September.
Bafikile kwakho.
They went to your house.
No, it's my ekhaya la ngizala khona.
It's my birthplace where I was born, at home.
And what happened when you met them there?
Kwenzekani manihlangana lapho?
Ngangena ekhaya,
I went in.
ngabathola lo mama bayi-2,
I found them there, the two ladies.
and then the one Sophie Lekwala, was a neighbor yabo mama wami Attridgeville esisakhula basebenza ekalafoni okuyi-sister ekalafoni, and then wathi kimi awuphumzile ukhulile ne, and then ngathi kuye yebo, wathi size ngengxaki yakasoli lo munye bangakhulumi bokhuluma lo Sophie, wathi uSoli wasuswa Esidimeni on the 12th of June, then wayisiwa eDenver NGO, i-NGO yalo sesilo ebangikhomba u-Ethel.
Kawuphinde ubize igama le-NGO.
Please, can you tell us the name of the NGO again?
Was the Precious something NGO?
Was it Precious Angels?
Were we
Yes.
Precious Angels? Yeah, but it was Precious Angels. She says when she got home, the two ladies, one who talked was Sophie Lihwaba. She thinks that's her surname, but she was her mother's neighbor back at home in Attridgeville where her mother was. And she said they are there to tell them about Soli's condition because he was moved, and that happened on the 12th of June. And then she showed her Ethel Ngube, who was the owner of Precious Angels NGO.
Before you carry on, Mrs. Mochekwa, was it Sophie Linkwane who was there with Mrs. Ngube?
Ingabe kwaku Sophie Likhwale wayelapho nomama uNcube?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And so they said they'd like to tell you about Soli's condition. Can you continue from there?
Cela uqhubeke.
Babukuthi ukukhuluma yena uSophie wathi uSoli wasuswa Esidimeni nge-12 wayisiwa eDenver, and then ngaba isimanga kimi because iDenville is so neighbor to me. I said, why uSoli if wasuswa lapha eSidimeni singatshelwanga? Wathi ayena akazi.
She told us that Soli was moved from Life Esidimeni to Denver on the 12th of June. And she asked that why wasn't I informed, because Denver is my neighboring township or my neighboring facility or next to where I live.
And okay, Ethel wathi uye wabalanda Esidimeni. Ambuza ngathi uyini yena, wathi owner i-NGOs in Denver naseMusalo, and then ngathi kuye ufuna ukwazisa izathu sokuthi usithole njani if
Well, umusalo, ukhuluma ngomsalo street, angithi?
When you
Yes,
talk
in
about
Attridgeville.
Musalo, you talk
Ufuna
about
ibhaleke
Musalo
kahle.
Street in
Yeah,
Attridgeville.
and number 10 Musalo Attridgeville.
She says that Sophie told her that Ethel is the one who took the patients herself from Life Esidimeni, and she was the owner of the NGO Precious Angels, and the owner of another NGO in Musalo Street in Attridgeville.
And did Mrs. Ngube confirm that?
Ingabe umama uNcube wakuqinisekisa lokho?
Yebo, because ubaphethe diary, wavula diary yakhe. Mina ngambuza umbuzo ukuthi uSoli akasuka eSidimeni and then aya eDenver banjani, wathi kimi nginama ithomba angangikhomba ithomba zakaSoli azangangikhombe, ngacala ngakhala because I was feel pain ukuthi why my brother asuka eSidimeni azofika la Attridgeville sihlala la Attridgeville and singambonanga.
Yes, she confirmed that she was the owner and she had a diary. And when she took out her diary, she said when she asked about Soli's condition, she said she would show her pictures of Soli, how Soli was doing, but she never did. And she started crying because of that situation.
At that stage, when Mrs.
She means the
Ngube,
witness started crying.
Usho ukuthi wena waqala ukukhala.
ime nodadewethu omncane uze
She was with her sister and her as well. They started crying.
when Mrs. Ngube said she will show you pictures of Soli, was Soli still alive at that stage?
Ngalesi sikhathi umama uNcube ethi uzokubonisa izithombe zikaSoli. Ingabe uSoli wayesaphila ngaleso
No.
sikhathi?
When did Soli pass away?
uSoli wasishiya nini emhlabeni?
yena u-ethel wathi usoli washona ngeyi-6 zaka-agasti.
Ethel said Soli passed on the 6th of August.
Did you ask her why it took so long to inform you of Soli's death?
Wambuza ukuthi kungani athathe isikhathi eside kangaka ukuthi antshele ngokufa kaSoli.
Ngambuza ngathi why uhlala isikhathi eside kangaka ungasitshelanga nokuthi usoli ushonile na. Wathi kithi bafunana nefayili lakaSoli Esidimeni azange bamnika amafayili akabusoli wena. So wasokola nokuthi asithola the numbers wethu ukuthi asifonele umuntu omncedile uSophie lo Sophie lo okumletha lapha ekhaya.
She said, Soli, on that day, they struggled to find them because Soli didn't have a file from Life Esidimeni. It's only Sophie that helped her to trace the family where they are. So that is why she came and told them.
And this was the 9th of September 2016.
Yes, was on Friday.
Yes, it was on a Friday.
Mrs. Mashekwa, did anybody tell you how Soli had died?
Khona wantshela ukuthi kwakuyini imbangela yokufa kaSoli.
Ngimbuzisile u-Ethel
I asked Ethel.
wathi kimi usoli ufe ukuzilalela nje balele.
And she said Soli was sleeping when he died.
And what happened next?
Kwase kwenzekani?
Sambuza sathi ngathula ngambuza ngathi ngathi la asikhulumi ngosoli oyi-1 la.
I told her that I think we're not talking about the same person here.
And then I start kuye ngithi okay ngicela ukubona isidumbu sakaSoli.
And I asked to see Soli's corpse.
And then wathi kithi it's okay and then uzasisa khona.
And she said it's okay, she will take us there.
And ngathi kuye before usisa khona ngifuna ukubiza umalume wami.
And I said, before you take us there, I want to call my uncle.
Ngabiza umalume wami.
I called my uncle.
And then uSophie Sophie Dukwal waphuma wahamba because you know my uncle.
So from there, Sophie just stood and went away because she knows my uncle.
And then umalume wangena.
My uncle came in.
Samchazisela ukuthi labo ulentombazana le beze no Sophie. And then uSophie usitshela ukuthi usolutionene.
And we explained to my uncle that this lady that is here, she came in with Sophie, and that Soli was no longer with us.
Justice, we're about to start on a new path, and I see that it's 11:30. Is it a good time to take the adjournment?
Yes, not until I've asked the witness, ikhaya lakho liphi eAtteridgeville?
Where is your home in Atteridgeville?
Number 23 Mpakanyana Street.
Yabonga mama.
Thank you, Mama.
Ikhaya liphi?
Yeah.
You know where my home is?
We are neighbor. My neighbor because mengihlala Makhambeni, number 11 Makhambeni Street.
I think you're my neighbor because my home is at Makambeni Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Into zomthetho mama kufuneka ngibatshele ukuthi nina nawe sabakhelwane.
Yeah.
By law, I have to tell you that me and you are neighbors.
And
And I have to tell everybody ukuba wena ungumakhelwane wami
anensikhulela ngaphansi kwakho.
ukuthi nina ukhulele ngaphansi kwami.
Yes.
Patience says I'm more than a neighbor. She grew up under me. So all of you know we adjourn until 12 o'clock.
Sho, le tafole a hlalanga kahle.
Mm.